are in the UK virtually with Jock, the superstar artist behind The Batman Who Laughs, Batman the Black Mirror, movie artist on blockbuster films like Dredd, Batman Begins, Ex Machina, done a bit of Star Wars. And now he's got a Comixology original series coming with Jeff Lemire in Snow Angels. Jock, thanks for taking the time and letting us take a peek inside your secret lair.
Thanks for dropping by, Sam. Good to see you.
So how did this is the first time you and Jeff have been working together. How did this project and the story kind of come about?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've known Jeff an awful long time. We both admire each other's work, and we've been trying to work together for years. In fact, we started talking about Snow Angels maybe 2013, 2014, so a long time ago. It was actually before Witches with Scott even. And we talked about it a bunch. We met up a couple of years later, and then out of the blue, he sent me the first 4 scripts, which I was not expecting. And he said, "Look, no pressure," but when I got home, I was inspired by our talk, and I ended up, just speeding through the first 4 scripts, and they're fantastic. And he said, draw these when you can. And schedules have been a bit tough, kind of balancing things, but finally this year I was able to jump on board. And it's Snow Angels is essentially a sort of science fiction story, in as much as it takes place on an ice planet, but it focuses on a family, 2 sisters and their father, who live in a trench that's cut through what they think is the entire circumference of the planet. So it has sort of sci-fi elements, which is very appealing, world building, which is really appealing, but also at its core, it's about the family dynamic and how they react to the challenges put in front of them.
With that in mind, I mean, Jeff's an artist himself. He's done things like Essex County, Sweet Tooth. How's it working with somebody that comes from that artist background and has that kind of eye when you're developing this world and working together to craft a story?
Yeah, he's. I love his work, but when he writes and draws stuff as well. And in fact, I know there was a point where he may have drawn this actually. So it was. I was, which would have been fine. And if I feel like if he felt he wanted to do it, then I would look forward to seeing it. But I was thrilled that he was up for collaborating with me on it. But actually, do you know what? To be honest, his scripts are just really good. They're not any different to receiving great scripts from other great writers that I've been lucky enough to work with. I have been very lucky in my career. And so even actually, funnily enough, there was a reveal, in one of the very later issues that I've recently drawn, and I was kind of poking him for ideas of what this kind of thing might look like, and I was like, maybe do me a sketch. Surely rather than we talking about it, you can just kind of draw a quick sketch. But he didn't. So he I think he was very hands off and let me bring my thing to it. So to be honest, the short answer is that I didn't really notice much difference. That I would guess that he had his writer's hat on for this one.
Do you have any art, speaking of which, that you'd like to kind of show from Snow Angels?
Sure, yeah. So sorry, this is all a bit lo-fi, but here we are in so we're in full lockdown again, by the way, over here in the UK. So, can you see if I pull up pages? Can you see that?
There that is, yeah.
So this is our main, what is essentially like the villain of the piece is what was a mythical character called the Snowman, which was essentially a character that was told to children in mythical fairy tale ways to keep them within the trench, because it's in their culture it's considered dangerous to leave the trench. So the Snowman is this kind of mythical, the snowman will come and get you if you do this or you do that. But sure enough, he's real, and unfortunately, he's on the hunt for 2 sisters, and so that's the color on it. One thing I found with this series, just to talk art for a minute, is the black and white you saw, but I scanned the black and white in, and the more kind of texture and atmosphere and white kind of marks I put over it, the better the art tended to look. So because it's such a snowy, icy environment, it seemed to work pretty well, throwing a lot of texture at it. So that's the final piece of stuff. So yeah, and this piece is when the family, when the father realizes that the snowman are basically chasing them. So there's lots of texture, lots of hopefully atmosphere, drama to go along with the action and the fantastic kind of dynamics of the family. I think I've got the piece. There's that page as well. There's the original.
Yeah. What are kind of, I mean, I love the paneling in that. I love how you've got the paneling kind of almost interspersed and overlaid over that main visual. Is that something that you do to kind of keep it a little more engaging, a little more kinetic when you're getting those sequences across?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I think so. I love laying out the pages, actually. Often going through the script and doing the first breakdowns, I feel like my job's done at that point, and the rest is actually you have to kind of render it all. And yeah, I love playing with panel, like you say, panel shapes, the way they're positioned, and how that really does affect the speed and how, the drama and the rhythm of comic pages, which is the sort of the secret art, I think, of comics. The secret power of them is that you can do this stuff in a unique way compared to something like television or film or whatever. They're a very different thing. And I love throwing the panels around. So thanks for spotting it.
Well, with something like Witches, there was, even beyond the paneling, it felt like there was a layer that kind of added a level of surrealism to the visuals, especially once you started to really dial up those horror elements. Was that something that you and Scott had kind of figured out, or was that something where it was just like, okay, how am I going to really kind of dial up the terror of these witches finally showing themselves?
Yeah, so that was mainly our colorist, Matt Hollingsworth, who's a wonderful colorist. We did go through quite a lot of back and forth of working that stuff out. And he sent me a few approaches, and I don't know, it just wasn't quite kind of clicking. And he just sent me the stuff that had this kind of almost spatter, which, like you say, kind of was almost like another level of atmosphere. And he really went for it on the pages, and my hope was that there were some moments where particularly when you are going down into the burrow, when you're meeting these witches, these kind of otherworldly creatures, it does kind of, it's almost disorienting you in a way that you might if you were physically going down into a place like this. So, I think doing horror in comics isn't the easiest thing, and we were looking for ways to sort of ramp that up to kind of make it as sort of unnerving and as kind of as effective as we could, really. So yeah, that was the thinking behind that approach.
When you're doing something as visceral, I mean, looking at those pages from Snow Angels, there's already blood and mayhem. There's people at the antagonist's feet and everything, and of course, witches, and even your Batman work does not pull its punches on the violence and the action. How do you kind of strike that balance between making it unsavory and yet terrifying at the same time?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because very carefully, I think is the answer. Because I love violent movies. I love stuff that's extreme, but at the same time, like you say, you don't want to make it not. You got to be careful of making it palatable as well. So, like anything, there's always a balance, I think. But I'm sort of always aiming for well, certainly with the action sequences, like a slightly visceral reaction. I'm hoping the way that I lay out and draw the pages leads you through the action and with a certain kind of feeling, a certain way. And again, I think that's one of my favorite aspects of drawing comics. Yeah, I mean, I can't deny I love drawing a bit of blood and gore if it's appropriate. If you need that moment, depending on the tone of the story. If you need that moment and it's appropriate, then I absolutely love doing a bit of blood and guts, for sure. I can't deny it. I hold my hands up.
Well, how you started? I certainly with when I think Scott, I think of you and Francesco Francavilla. You both started with him on that on the Black Mirror on
Sure.
the Detective Comics run right before Flashpoint, and here we are. As wild as it is to say this out loud, here we are over a decade later.
Yeah.
How quickly did you find that kind of, because you've been working with him on a lot of projects, including Witches, Batman Who Laughs a couple of years back.
Yeah.
how quickly did you find that natural chemistry between you two?
Yes, I mean, straight to, from, so, he's told the story a few times. I'm sure I have as well. But he basically phoned me out of the blue to ask me if I wanted to do Black Mirror, and right from the get go, I just had a really good feeling about him. Like, that's the only way that I can kind of explain it. And I guess that's that's the way it is in life, isn't it? You meet people that you like, you meet people that that you have a natural kind of affinity with or whatever. And just from the minute I spoke to Scott, I just had a really good feeling about it all, and I kind of wanted to work with him. And then we met in San Diego a couple of weeks later, and had a couple of drinks and chatted about the story. And it was just like, this sounds great. And the whole Black Mirror experience as well was a good one, because you got to remember as well that it was sort of just a random few issues within Detective Comics. It wasn't like a mini series. It wasn't like a sort of a special or anything like that. Scott had only done American Vampire for DC up until that point, and it just sort of clicked, between us all, with Francesco and even the editors. The whole group shared everything with each other. It was a very kind of it was a very positive working experience, and then the book went on to sort of be an evergreen book that people still come up to me today and say how much they love it, and it's one of their favorite Batman stories. And of course, Scott went on to do amazing stuff on the main Batman title, and so for many reasons, it's kind of it came from very small beginnings, but it actually became something larger than us all, really. It's larger than some of its parts, and that, so it's it's a really special book for us all. I think it was kind of what started us down a path, the path that we're on. I mean, we'd all done stuff before then, but there's something about Black Mirror, is what I'm saying, that kind of somehow cemented something in it, and it really kind of propelled things forward.
I mean, you'd been working on Batman-related projects even, far before that, including maybe my favorite Batman movie of all time. I'm a huge Batman Begins fan. Like, that, I remember.
Oh, great.
I remember skipping school, like, to go see. I'm showing off my age, but I was in high school, not like an elementary school. Like, I remember skipping school to watch Batman Begins in theaters, and that on the day it opened. How was it working with Christopher Nolan, and just getting to like deliver one of the most iconic superhero films of all time?
Well, actually, my work on Batman Begins, which was my first film work, really was through DC. Chris wanted to hire a few comic artists from DC. I don't think there was very many of us, maybe 3, 4, 5 of us. And we weren't necessarily given direction. He just wanted to see, the brief was, what would a real Batman look like? If the only sort of remit was that it's a guy in a suit. What does this guy look like, kind of thing? And we could do as much or as little as we wanted, given completely free reign. So I just did a bunch of drawings, sent them off, and that was it. And although I've worked on many films since then, that was my first experience of it. And then seeing the movie for the first time in Leicester Square in London, and realizing that it was pretty good. It was a thrill. I love movies as much as comics, so I like working on them both for different reasons.
Well, somebody that's also gotten to work extensively with 2000 AD, you got to tackle their flagship character. I see the poster like right behind you.
Yeah, sorry, my desktop just happens to be pointed. That's my 2000 AD corner. I grew up reading 2000 AD. That was the comic that made me want to draw. That was the comic that made me want to work in comics. And I've got a little kind of corner of my studio that's just 2000 AD original art and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how was it working on Dredd? That's one of the best movies in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. Again, he was my favorite character. He's when I first picked up 2000 AD, when I was a little bit late to coming to it. I was about maybe 14, 15, and I was into drawing anyway. But when I picked up 2000 AD, that's what made me want to specifically draw comics. And I became a rabid follower of 2000 AD and all the incredible artists and writers that we now realize was kind of like kind of lightning in a bottle. The names that have come from 2000 AD is incredible. And back then, arguably they were in their prime and they were doing some of their best work within 2000 AD. So Dredd was very special to me. And getting the call to work on the Dredd movie was a bit of a pinch me moment for me. It was amazing, and meeting Alex Garland and DNA, who produced the film. We went on to work on Ex Machina and Annihilation together. And I'm really proud of the stuff I do with Alex. He's an amazing filmmaker, and he's got a very smart brain, and is very challenging to work for. So working on Dredd within those parameters was really interesting. Like, there was no zaniness, there was no craziness like in some of the comic strips. It was a very kind of stripped down, brutal, sort of urban, realistic version of Dredd, and to get that to the point where it felt like it could be feasible and possible was really challenging, and it was massively rewarding.
Yeah, one of these days we'll get Walter the robot on the big screen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, when I first went in from a meeting, funnily enough, I just took along some of my comic stuff that I'd done, and Andrew McDonald, the producer, we were chatting about the tone of the film, and as they were flicking through my stuff, and how there wouldn't be any robots, there wouldn't be any sort of flying cars, for example, and Andrew just went, like none of this, and there was a kind of a zany, futuristic kind of like fun park and theme parks at page that I'd done, and it was like, okay, yeah, I get you. Maybe in someone else's hand we'll see those elements in Dredd.
Well, between Snow Angels has got sci-fi elements, this kind of like society sheltering in this chasm on this frigid planet. Obviously, all your work with Alex Garland, you've done Star Wars. What do you find appealing about being an artist and storyteller in the science fiction space?
I suppose that is mainly science fiction, isn't it? I hadn't really thought about it. Well, I mean, the obvious one is world building, really. There's an amazing sort of freedom, and also opportunity when you're building new worlds, new places. Which if you're drawing something more reality based, you don't get that in quite the same way. So, but I would say, to be honest, it's 2000 AD's fault that that was essentially a sci-fi comic. Though they had many different types of stories within it, it's basically envisioned as a sci-fi comic, and that's probably so ingrained in my DNA that it's quite natural for me to kind of to sort of enjoy drawing those elements, I would say.
In terms of your style, I think one of the more defining aspects of it is it's very raw. There's a visceral quality to it. Like even in the quieter sequences, it's not necessarily about delivering like kind of like conventional clean line. It's about kind of how what are these characters feeling, and how do I kind of be it through an ink wash or through kind of a more kind of like blurred effect. Like with Hollingsworth on Witches, but even your superhero books, how did you kind of develop that style?
Yeah, I'm not a shiny superhero artist. Well observed, for sure. And I've been, one of the lovely things about comics, is that it does let you sort of, develop your own take on things, and actually, the people, the creators that do that, arguably, I think, well, they're my favorite creators. The ones that you can uniquely kind of hear their voice in their writing, or the way they draw is uniquely, the way that they do it. And I think that's sort of, that's the kind of appeal of working on comics. So. And when it's something like Snow Angels, where it's our own thing, that's just you get, it's a free reign. When I'm doing something like Batman Who Laughs, you're aware that it's for DC. You really try not to think like that, because it's very easy to think you should approach it in a certain way, and that isn't always the healthiest way to approach a project. I think you should bring whatever it is you're going to bring to it. But for something like Snow Angels, all bets are off. It's ours, so we can do whatever we want. So it is very freeing in that way. And style wise, nothing's deliberate, to be honest, Sam. Nothing's really. It's just developed as I've gone. People will say, "Oh, how'd you get this?" I don't know. I just try and draw what I think I want to see. What I feel would look good. And sometimes I hit the mark, and sometimes I don't. But when you do hit the mark, and you do it in what feels like a sort of slightly more personal way, and again, I think that's what the comics medium is really good at, is you actually have a very sort of, it's very personal when you read a comic. It's just you and the story in front of you. I think if you are able to just hit those little moments, like you're saying, be them emotional moments or visceral moments, but if you hit them and people respond to it, I think that's magic, and that's kind of what I'm after, really.
Cool. Just to kind of close this out on the interview portion of this, what are you really kind of hoping that in terms of that personal message and that personal touch, like you were saying with Snow Angels, that really you're really proud of with this book, and in particular, and that you hope readers kind of walk away with?
The characters. The characters. There was a lot of things that were appealing about the story, the setting, the sort of sci-fi world, the environment, the snow, the atmosphere is all very appealing, and some really cool stuff happens. There's some amazing elements in it, but really it's about the characters, and it's about the dad and the two sisters, and how they their dynamic between them all, and that's always, to me, that's what makes a good story. You can have cool stuff blowing up, but if you don't care about the characters, it doesn't mean anything. So my hope is that I'm looking forward to people meeting these Pa and Millie and May May, and hopefully they'll respond to them and enjoy the adventure that they end up on.
Cool. And this is your main drawing station here in the home studio?
Exactly. Yeah. For comics, I still draw everything traditionally. So, pens, inks, everything, and then I take it over and scan and work at the computer. But there's that snowman piece again.
Is there no interest in ever kind of go digital, or is it just kind of like this is what I know, this is beautiful, we're going to stick with this?
Yeah, I do digital for movie work, for concept work, but there's something about comics that I still love drawing by hand. Basically, there's just something using ink. Let's see what else I've got. Show you just some random pages, but they're all from Snow Angels. So let me see. Because I'm actually drawing, it's 10 issues, and I'm actually inking issue 10 right now. So we're way ahead, and it's definitely going to, it's going to come out monthly, and we're in good shape. So